Hi everyone, it's Rena. So this video is if your sun is in Scorpio and your moon is in Capricorn. This combination is definitely something that I see as being great for success. When I talk about success, I'm talking about career-wise, because when it comes to relationships, there might be some things that the person has to adjust. They're going to be the type of person who is very driven, and so that can sometimes, hamper a person's personal life, because this combination could definitely be a workaholic. And I think that when you talk about these two signs in tandem, sun and moon, I think it's a lot easier in some ways than having the sun in Capricorn and the moon in Scorpio. Because whenever you have the moon in Scorpio, there's going to be very complicated emotions and, emotional reactions. And that sometimes can affect a person's career life, for instance, and definitely their personal life. So let's look at what each of these planets represent in a person's core influence for their personality traits. First of all, we have to say that the sun is the center of it all. If you want to know someone and you can only know one thing about them astrologically, you want to know what their sun sign is. But the moon sign really is quite influential. And if a person has emotional patterns that are very difficult, depending on other factors, that could lead to the person having trouble with their career. For instance, a person who has anger management issues, that kind of person is going to burn bridges, and it's going to be hard for them to find people who want to work with them or for them. They're going to find it hard to have a person who wants to stay connected to them romantically. So this combination is easier in the sense that even though the sun is in Scorpio, and therefore because Scorpio is a water sign, the person is going to be emotional at some level, at a core level. The moon is the reactive factor, and it's in an earth sign. And in Capricorn, it doesn't get any colder. There's like a coldness because Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. And this is, in a way, one of the benefits for such a person, and also one of the liabilities at the same time. Because on the positive side, when you have the moon in Capricorn, you can become like steel. And so, the phrase that I always think about when I think about the sign of Capricorn is pull yourself up by your bootstraps, or suck it up, buttercup. One of those kinds of phrases. Like Saturn is very much like, hey, you have to grin and bear it. You've got to do this. There's a duty associated with Saturn. And so because it's in the moon position and the emotional side of things, it's like the person is telling themselves, get over yourself. And even though that can be cutting oneself off from their emotions, it also is like not self-indulgent. So sometimes if a person has a certain moon sign, like let's say it's Cancer, they may become very maudlin. They might be very overly sentimental, milking their emotions for all they're worth, manipulating people with their emotions. And that is the other extreme of things. And that can be problematic too. But don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying that this moon sign doesn't come without challenges, because it does. when people cut themselves off from their emotions, maybe because they're trying to climb to the top career-wise, they could be ignoring some things that they really need to heal from. And when you have Scorpio as a sun sign, I feel that healing from things is something that you probably have to do. All signs can and usually do have some sort of trauma. So I'm not saying anything along those lines, but I do feel that the water signs, it hits them harder. Or maybe they are, I do feel that in some cases there is like a specific type of trauma that they are meant to face that is quite intense. So with Scorpio, because Scorpio rules the 8th house, which actually specializes in trauma and, power abuse in general. But it's also the house of death. It's the house of transformation. But I feel, I've always felt, just from reading biographies of famous people, but also I read this somewhere about water signs, and when I say water signs, I'm talking about sun and water, is that they probably had something with their father, because the sun is the father, but the father could have died when they were young, and that the father, if the father isn't dead, sometimes the father is weak, and when I say weak, I'm talking about addiction, or if the father is, you could say, morally weak. Maybe the father is a criminal or something like that, and the child doesn't have the father in their life, or he's in and out of his life. Now, I say I'm also talking about female Scorpios as well. But the male, obviously, not having that male figure to look up to, that can create its own set of problems if that's the case. Now, obviously, not 100% of Scorpio people are not going to have fathers that are dead or not very prominent in their lives. So I'm just talking about what some of the possible challenges that are specific to Scorpio could be. Now, going back to the moon sign, the moon represents the mother. And the mother, so we can look to the moon sign for the type of mother that the child had. Now, this is tricky because the mother, it doesn't have to be that sign, so the mother doesn't have to be a Capricorn, but they may act like a Capricorn. Now, how do you act like a Capricorn to a child? It can be how the mother sees life herself, and also how she treats the child. So when it's in Capricorn, the mother may be very ambitious for the child. So I don't care what sun sign I see. When I do private readings, when I see somebody who has the moon in Capricorn, I'm going to assume more times than not that they had a mother who pushed them in their, career-wise. And that could be when they were very young, that their mother wanted them to get good grades. I mean, achievement-wise, I should say. And, you could say, some people might say, well, that's what a parent does. But it's really, a lot of people don't understand that this can be very, very problematic. Probably this combination is not going to be as negatively impacted by it because they are going to tend to be ambitious anyway, because Scorpio is ruled by Mars and Pluto. Mars is our drive and Pluto is power. So that kind of a person wants to attain, wants to become a powerful person. So it's really some of the other signs that may feel like they are loved unconditionally. When you have the moon in Capricorn, you kind of suck it up and think, well, there's like a cynicism with Capricorn. And in the moon position, the person can say, well, that's the way that the world works, is that, you have to sing for your supper. You have to do something to get your needs met. And so this combination is kind of hard-boiled in that sense. And I also say it's hard-boiled because Scorpio is a very, there's like a prickly aspect to me when it comes to Scorpio. And I think it's because of Mars, not so much Pluto. Both of those planets that rule Scorpio, Mars and Pluto, are both considered malefic planets in Vedic astrology. Malefic, you think of the word malo in Spanish, meaning bad. But what I would say, I haven't studied Vedic astrology, but I'm assuming it means that they have a lot of difficult influences. But really, I would characterize it as they're very challenging, but they can make a person very strong at the same time. This is the paradox. And it's very important in life to be strong because life can throw a lot at us. So it's nothing to sneeze at to say, somebody is strong. It's a good thing. The problem is when the person cares more about being strong than they care about healing, because a lot of times we will have to heal something in our life. That's just the way that life works, is that we have these traumas and we grow up. We have them when we're children and we grow up, and then we don't have anywhere to go with them. So anyway, when the moon is in Capricorn, the person may fear, I feel, because the moon can be your emotional nature, your need for security. And this moon position can really fear that they would not be successful. So when they're young, they may be like, will I be successful, and really fret. Maybe when you were young, you were worried about not getting straight A's, or, not achieving to the top of your ability. And then when you're starting out in your first job, making sure that you were successful, whatever that means to you. So these kinds of things can kind of plague a person because they feel like they have something to prove, and they want to, they want to ascend to a higher level. That's your emotional security, is success and being status seeking in terms of the Capricorn influence. The symbol of Capricorn is the mountain goat. The mountain goat is climbing that peak, mountain peak, or is the peak is at the top, right? Climbing the mountain to get to the peak. And this is represented by status, the world, the 10th house that Capricorn rules is at the top of the chart, just like at the top of the mountain. And it is your place in the world, and you want to have a place that is greater than where you started from. So if somebody is born a Capricorn and they're born to a prominent family, they're not going to rest on their laurels. They're going to keep going. And this is sun, moon, maybe ascendant. But anyway, even though Scorpio is a water sign, I feel that out of all the water signs, Scorpio is the hardest asked one. Meaning that I feel that Scorpio people believe that they don't have, to me, they don't have the same sense of sympathy for others the way that Cancer and Pisces people do. But that isn't meant to say that they are cruel. It just means that there is a ruthless quality with Scorpio that isn't present with those other two water signs. And I think it's because of the planets that rule Scorpio. And, ambition can play a part as well. So this combination can be very Machiavellian, meaning that the person is going to try to succeed. This person may try to get ahead any way, by any means necessary. And that's not to suggest that this combination is completely without ethics or anything, but there's a I guess you would call it a gift, but a temptation can result from that gift of Scorpio being able to see into, can really read people so well that you're able to kind of get the upper hand sometimes when you're dealing with people. So let's say you're in business, you would have that cunning by knowing what makes a person tick, how to kind of deal with them. And it's not to say that we all can't, we all might not do that from time to time, not even thinking about it. But I could see somebody with the moon in Capricorn being very aware of what they're doing and not feeling like, it's a means to an end. And the end is success. And that there's an emotional drive to do so that really speaks to that. Now you have to look at your chart. This is not going to be as intense as I say for everybody, because let's say your moon is in, let's say your sun is in the 12th house. That will automatically make you more concerned about humanity from a spiritual perspective. Maybe make you a bit more humble and empathic. And you may not need to do that as much. Or even if your moon is in the 12th house, I suppose it could work that way too. But I feel that, because these two signs sextile one another, if the moon is in the 12th house, the sun would be in the 10th house. Supposedly, I guess. And that could indicate that the person is very ambitious and even more, maybe even kind of insecure and wanting to prove themselves. So actually that scenario might not play out the way I think it would. But yeah, you do have to look at house placement and other planets that are involved. I mean, they're going, your Mars sign. If your sun is in Scorpio, you could have Mars in Scorpio too. I was going to say, God help you with this combination, and be like, wow, that would be a powerhouse, but maybe something that's very obsessive, when it comes to being powerful. What kind of careers? Well, I would look more, I guess you could say the moon as well could feature in here. I would, strangely enough, being a therapist, I could actually see that, because if you have the moon in Capricorn, some kind of earth sign, you're going to be less kind of affected by other people's emotions than if it was the other way around of having the moon in Scorpio and the sun in Capricorn. And Scorpio is a natural for psychology, point blank. But another area that you would be really adept at is something with forensics science, because Scorpio is a natural detective, and Scorpio is a water sign, very intuitive, and I feel that people that are very successful and good detectives, that they have that intuitive side. It's not just that they are observing things very closely. I don't think it's that at all. I think that there's something intuitive that makes them, take a certain angle or kind of investigate certain things. So I think that anything in that kind of work, like police work, where you're looking for clues, is a natural as well. And actually, people, if you have Mercury in Scorpio, you may love like true crime novels. Well, you could even love it if your sun is in Scorpio. But that idea of what makes a serial killer's mind tick. You might be somebody who really, wants to delve into it, because Scorpio, the eighth house that Scorpio rules, deals with the shadow self, the seedy underbelly of life. And that for you, with that moon in that very kind of cold sign, can handle those gory details a lot better. Some people get very emotionally affected by dealing with evil at that level, and Scorpio is made to do so. You're built for that. But you're human too, so it helps to have that moon sign. Anything with reformation, where you're kind of like changing, trying to improve something. Scorpio is a healer, so I mean, even if I feel like even when it comes to like some kind of the healing arts or something like that, being a shaman or shamanic healing, I feel like that is a great thing for this combination, because shamanism is strongly connected to the earth. You could say paganism as well. One thing I am a little bit leery about paganism myself, and what I suspect, and what could be a trap for Scorpios, is that I feel like sometimes it attracts people who are on power trips, or who are very controlling. Like I feel sometimes with spells that it's almost like the person's playing God and they're trying to control certain things in their life. They're trying to control other people. Of course, I'm sure that some people refuse to, do kind of spell work when it involves other people, but they're just doing it for themselves. And, so take that with a large grain of salt, what I said, because I might have a little bit of ignorance about that area, and maybe a little bit of prejudice. I say that I think I was burned at the stake as a witch in another lifetime, so the word witch has it's kind of a sore subject for me. But yeah, but I think of like shamanism, because it works with the elements, and it really is also about transformation, and that is right up Scorpio's alley. In terms of love, I feel that this combination might even delay getting involved with somebody, because Scorpio, it's like a landmine when it comes to relationships and emotions. Scorpio is tends to have a lot of trust issues around relationships in general, maybe even like business partnerships, but definitely romantic relationships. And with Capricorn, like I said, there's a cynicism. So the person may feel like, oh, this person is just going to, wants me for my money, or, because this combination isn't going to be the most, I was going to say the word generous, but that sounds like a value judgment. It's not really free spending, let's put it that way. You might be quite frugal, to say the least. And, look to the rising sign, because when the person's younger, they might put on a good show. And it might even be something they do later in life. So if you have a fire sign ascendant in particular, you might spend money on somebody to try to win them over, knowing that, feeling like that's what you have to do to kind of, you got to play the game, so to speak. And this will be true if your Venus is in, because Venus can even affect money issues too, as well as love, which is kind of funny. If your Venus is in, let's see what sign of Scorpio, like in Sagittarius or in Libra, you may have a more free spending tendencies, especially if your rising sign is also in fire. You might just kind of like have this attitude that this is what you got to do. You got to pay the piper for love. But then you might rein it in later on. But there could be that cynicism, and you might be like leery, especially if you are doing well financially, to involve somebody in your life, because you might be like, is that person going to take me to the cleaners in a few years because they just want my money? And that's definitely something to look at, because sometimes what I have observed is the person who is complaining about gold diggers or people who are using them for their money, at the beginning of the relationship, they are presenting themselves in a very materialistic way. So they're, talking about, oh, I have this, I have that, trying to use that as kind of a carrot to lure that person in. Well, if you kind of flaunt your money, you can't complain if you attract a person who is money hungry, who is materialistic. So that's one of those things that a person with this combination has to look at. But I don't think that's going to be true for 100% of you, because some of you are going to be, so I think of the Four of Pentacles. If you've ever seen that picture in the Rider-Waite deck, the pentacles relate to the earth element and coins. Sometimes they say 4 coins. And the person's like hugging it, holding on to it. And some of you are definitely like that no matter what. But I definitely think that this combination is family oriented. So I do feel that you're going to be motivated more times than not to seek relationship, especially for the purpose of procreation and creating a family. That might be, if you don't want a family for whatever reason, then that might be harder to kind of convince yourself that a relationship is important. But Scorpio is a sign that is very, I feel that it has a very deep love when it finds that right person, that perfect person for themselves. It's just like the phrase that came into my mind is barbed wire over the heart, that the other person has to penetrate to get to that burning heart of a Scorpio. But again, there could be a lot of trust issues. That could be the barbed wire, where the person has experienced loss in the form of death or abandonment, and they are terrified of it happening again. The Scorpio person can be terrified of being cheated on, terrified of being abandoned or betrayed, whatever you want to call it. and that can keep them from opening their heart more. Okay, well, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.